It was a sunny afternoon when Lisa, a young mother-to-be, held her husband Michael's hand tightly in the hospital room. Their love story was the kind that made others believe in fairy tales, high school sweethearts who had beaten the odds and built a beautiful life together. They'd spent months decorating the nursery, imagining their baby's future, and dreaming of all the memories they would create as a family. But nothing could prepare them for the moment their daughter, Mia, came into the world. As the doctor handed Lisa her newborn, the room fell eerily silent. Lisa's heart swelled with love, but she noticed the confusion on Michael's face. Their baby had strikingly dark skin, a stark contrast to their own. The nurse glanced nervously between them, sensing the tension. Michael stepped back, his expression shifting from disbelief to something colder. He didn't say a word, but his silence spoke volumes. The days that followed were a blur of accusations and pain. Michael refused to look at Lisa, let alone hold Mia. He demanded answers Lisa didn't have. How could this be? She had never been unfaithful, but Michael wouldn't believe her. His trust shattered, and within weeks he packed his bags and walked out the door, leaving Lisa to face the world alone. Friends and family whispered behind her back, questioning her character. Lisa, however, stood firm in her truth. Her love for Mia was unwavering, even as the world around her seemed to crumble. Years passed, and Lisa poured her heart into raising Mia. Despite the challenges, their bond only grew stronger. Mia was bright, curious, and full of life, her laughter filling their modest home with warmth. But as Mia got older, Lisa couldn't ignore the lingering questions. What if there was an explanation, something no one had considered? Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to take a DNA test, hoping it might provide some clarity and perhaps a sense of closure. When the results finally arrived, Lisa's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Her heart raced as she read the words on the page, but instead of finding comfort, what she discovered left her breathless. The truth was far more shocking than anything she could have imagined. The answer didn't just explain Mia's appearance, it revealed a secret that turned their lives upside down. And that's when everything changed. The paper in Lisa's hands shook as her mind struggled to process the words staring back at her. It wasn't just a simple explanation she had hoped for. It wasn't a quick resolution to years of whispers and doubts. No, this was something deeper, something that made her stomach churn with unease. She read the results again, this time slower, as if the meaning might change if she looked carefully enough. But the words stayed the same. She sat at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper while Mia played with her dolls in the living room. The sound of her daughter's giggles was a bittersweet reminder of the innocence Lisa had fought to protect. All those years, she had told herself that love was enough, that she didn't need anyone else to validate their little family. But now, this result changed everything. It wasn't just about proving her innocence to Michael or silencing the doubters. It was about understanding a truth that had been hidden in the shadows for far too long. Lisa's thoughts drifted back to the early days after Mia was born, to the weight of the stares from neighbors and strangers alike. People had their own theories, some openly voiced, others murmured behind closed doors. She remembered standing in line at the grocery store, feeling the cashier's gaze linger just a moment too long on Mia's dark curls and smooth brown skin. And then there was Michael's mother, who hadn't minced her words when she accused Lisa of betraying her son. "It doesn't make sense," she had said coldly, arms crossed as she stood in their living room. "Babies don't just turn out this way unless there's something you're not telling us." Lisa had begged Michael to believe her, to see the love they had shared as proof of her loyalty. But doubt had already poisoned his heart. He had always been a man who needed control, who needed things to fit neatly into boxes. And when Mia didn't fit, he walked away. Over the years, Lisa had replayed those moments in her mind, wondering if there was something she missed. Could there have been a mistake at the hospital? Was there a chance, however slim, that Mia wasn't hers? But no, she remembered the moment she held her daughter for the first time, the overwhelming connection that made every fear and doubt disappear. Mia was hers. She was certain of it. Yet the DNA test now suggested there was more to the story. That night, after tucking Mia into bed, Lisa sat in the quiet of her living room, staring at the report. Her heart raced as she reread the section that mentioned a genetic anomaly, something rare, something that didn't quite add up. The results didn't just challenge her understanding of her daughter's origins. They hinted at something bigger, something buried in the past. There was a name listed in the findings, a distant relative she had never heard of before. Lisa's curiosity burned, but it was mixed with fear. Who was this person, and what did they have to do with her daughter? Unable to sleep, Lisa turned to her laptop, typing the name into a search engine. As the results loaded, she felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just generic records of someone who had lived decades ago. But as she clicked through the links, she stumbled upon an article that made her blood run cold. It was an old newspaper clipping, dated over 50 years ago. The headline mentioned a small town just a few hours away and a tragedy that had shaken the community. The details were vague, but the story mentioned a family with an unusual genetic condition, something that caused their skin to darken despite having no known heritage to explain it. It wasn't just about appearance. The article hinted at strange illnesses and unexplained phenomena that surrounded the family. There were whispers of fear and suspicion, of neighbors who had turned their backs on them out of ignorance and superstition. Lisa read the article twice, her pulse quickening with each line. Was this connected to Mia? Could this explain the mystery that had haunted her for so long? Lisa's hands hovered over the keyboard as she debated what to do next. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Digging deeper might bring answers, but it could also unravel truths she wasn't prepared to face. She thought about Mia, her bright smile, her endless questions about the world. Lisa had always wanted to protect her from pain, but now she wondered if shielding her daughter had kept her from understanding an important part of who she was. The next morning, Lisa couldn't hide her unease. Mia, ever perceptive, noticed right away. "Mommy, are you okay?" she asked, her big brown eyes filled with concern. Lisa forced a smile and assured her that everything was fine. But as she watched her daughter pour syrup over her pancakes, Lisa knew she couldn't keep the truth hidden much longer. This wasn't just about her anymore. Mia deserved to know where she came from, no matter how complicated or unsettling the answer might be. Determined to find more information, Lisa reached out to a genealogy expert she had heard about through an online forum. The woman, an older lady named Eleanor, had a reputation for uncovering family secrets that others couldn't. Lisa hesitated before sending the email, unsure of how much to share. She decided to keep it simple, focusing on the DNA test and the mysterious relative it had uncovered. Within hours, Eleanor replied, her message brief but encouraging. She was intrigued and willing to help. Days turned into weeks as Eleanor worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. Lisa tried to focus on her day-to-day life, but the anticipation was unbearable. She found herself checking her email obsessively, hoping for an update. Finally, one afternoon, a message from Eleanor arrived. Lisa's heart pounded as she opened it. The email began with an apology for the delay, followed by a detailed explanation of what Eleanor had discovered. It wasn't just one relative. There was an entire branch of Lisa's family tree that had been hidden from view. They were connected to the same small town mentioned in the article, and their story was far more complex than Lisa had imagined. There were rumors of a medical experiment gone wrong, of records that had been deliberately erased. Eleanor had even uncovered an old photograph, blurry but unmistakable in its haunting resemblance to Mia. Lisa's hands trembled as she scrolled through the email. The pieces were starting to come together, but the picture they painted was terrifying. She couldn't help but wonder what Michael would think if he knew the truth. Would it have changed anything? Would he have stayed? These questions gnawed her, but there was no time for regret. Lisa knew she had to keep digging, no matter where the path led. By the time she closed her laptop, the sun had set, casting long shadows across the room. Lisa looked over at Mia, who was busy drawing pictures at the coffee table. Her daughter's world was still so pure, untouched by the weight of what Lisa had just learned. For a moment, she considered letting it stay that way. But deep down, Lisa knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. The answers were out there, waiting to be uncovered. And whatever they revealed, Lisa was determined to face them head-on. Lisa stared at the email for what felt like hours, the details swirling in her mind like a storm she couldn't escape. There were too many questions and not enough answers. Eleanor's discoveries only deepened the mystery, and now Lisa felt like she was standing at the edge of something far bigger than she'd anticipated. The name of the family connected to Mia's DNA had appeared in more records than she expected, each one carrying whispers of scandal and secrecy. But what unsettled Lisa most wasn't just the genetic link, it was the implications of the experiments Eleanor had mentioned. That night, Lisa lay awake, her thoughts running wild. She kept picturing the photograph Eleanor had sent. The face in the image, though grainy, bore a striking resemblance to Mia. The girl in the photo looked to be no older than 10, with the same soft curls and warm brown eyes. But there was something in her expression, a quiet sadness, a hint of fear, that made Lisa's chest tighten. Who was this girl? What had happened to her? And why had her story been buried for so long? The next morning, Lisa decided it was time to confront the questions she had been avoiding. She called Eleanor, who answered on the second ring. Eleanor's voice was calm, but Lisa could sense the hesitation in her tone. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this," Eleanor began, "but there's something you need to know about that family. Their history isn't just complicated, it's dangerous." Lisa's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Eleanor explained that the experiments linked to the family had been part of a controversial medical study decades ago, one that had been shut down under mysterious circumstances. The details were murky, but it seemed the study had been focused on genetic manipulation. Participants had been promised cures for rare illnesses, but the results were catastrophic. Families were left devastated, and some children had been taken away under the guise of further research. Many of the records had been sealed or destroyed, leaving only fragments of the truth behind. Lisa's grip on the phone tightened as Eleanor continued. The girl in the photo, her name was Clara. She was part of the study. And, well, there are rumors she disappeared shortly after the photo was taken. Disappeared? Lisa's voice cracked. "No one knows what happened to her," Eleanor said gently. "But I think you need to be careful, Lisa. This isn't just about uncovering your daughter's origins. There are people who went to great lengths to hide this story. They might not want it to resurface." Lisa hung up, her heart racing. She felt like she was falling down a rabbit hole, each new revelation pulling her further away from the life she thought she knew. She couldn't stop thinking about Clara. Was Mia somehow connected to her? The resemblance was too strong to ignore, but the timeline didn't make sense. Clara would have been an adult by now. Where was she? And why did it feel like every answer only led to more questions? Determined to find out more, Lisa decided to visit the town where the experiments had taken place. It was a small, forgotten place, tucked away in the countryside. Lisa packed a bag for the weekend, telling Mia it was a special adventure for the two of them. She didn't want to scare her daughter, but she also couldn't leave her behind. Something about this journey felt too personal, too urgent to face alone. The drive to the town was long and quiet, the roads winding through dense forests that seemed to stretch endlessly. Mia chattered happily in the back seat, oblivious to the tension gripping Lisa. When they finally arrived, Lisa was struck by how desolate the place felt. The main street was lined with old, crumbling buildings, their windows dark and empty. It was as if time had stopped here, leaving the town frozen in the past. Lisa parked the car and stepped out, scanning the street for any sign of life. An elderly man sitting on a bench watched her with weary eyes, his expression unreadable. Lisa hesitated before approaching him, her heart pounding. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'm looking for information about a family that used to live here. They were part of some kind of medical study." The man's face darkened, and he shook his head. "You don't want to dig into that," he muttered. "Some things are better left alone." "But I need to know," Lisa insisted. "It's about my daughter. Please." The man sighed, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the past was too much to bear. "There was a doctor," he said finally, "Dr. Hayes. He ran the study, promised miracles, but all he brought was pain. People here don't like to talk about it. Too many bad memories. Lisa pressed him for more details, but the man refused to say anything else. Frustrated but undeterred, she decided to explore the town on her own. She found the old hospital where the experiments had taken place, its facade, weathered and overgrown with ivy. The building was boarded up, but Lisa felt an almost magnetic pull toward it. She stood in front of the entrance, her thoughts racing. What secrets were hidden inside those walls? As Lisa turned to leave, she noticed Mia staring at the building with a curious expression. "Mommy, do you hear that?" Mia asked, tilting her head. "Hear what?" Lisa asked, frowning. "It's like humming," Maya said softly. Lisa strained to listen, but all she heard was the rustling of leaves in the wind. She brushed it off, assuming Mia's imagination was running wild. But as they walked back to the car, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching them. That night, Lisa lay awake in their motel room, staring at the ceiling as Mia slept soundly beside her. Her mind replayed the events of the day, the pieces of the puzzle refusing to fit together. She thought about Clara, about the experiments, about the eerie silence of the town. And then there was the DNA test. Proof that Mia was connected to all of this, even if Lisa didn't yet understand how. As the hours ticked by, Lisa felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on her. She knew she couldn't stop now, even if it meant uncovering truths she wasn't ready to face. Whatever lay ahead, Lisa was determined to protect Mia. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the answers she sought might come at a cost she wasn't prepared to pay. Lisa woke the next morning with a heavy heart. The motel room felt colder than it should, and the events of the previous day lingered like a dark cloud. She glanced over at Mia, who was still curled up under the covers, her small hand clutching a worn-out stuffed animal. For a moment, Lisa felt a pang of guilt. Was she dragging her daughter into something dangerous? But the need to uncover the truth was stronger than her fear. She couldn't stop now. After a quick breakfast, Lisa decided to revisit the old hospital. The pull she had felt toward the building the day before hadn't gone away. This time she brought Mia along, holding her hand tightly as they approached the crumbling structure. The air around the hospital felt different, almost heavy, as if the building itself was alive with the weight of forgotten secrets. The boards covering the windows and doors were old and loose, and Lisa found a gap big enough to slip through. She hesitated, glancing down at Mia. "Stay close to me, okay?" she whispered. Mia nodded, her wide eyes filled with curiosity. Inside, the hospital was eerily quiet. The air was damp, and the faint smell of mildew hung in the air. Dust particles floated through the beams of light that filtered in through cracks in the walls. The hallway stretched out before them, lined with rusted wheelchairs and overturned gurneys. Lisa's footsteps echoed softly, each sound making her heart race. As they moved deeper into the building, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her pulse quickening with every shadow that seemed to shift. Mia stayed close, her small hand gripping Lisa's tightly. "Mommy, look," Maya said suddenly, pointing to a doorway on their right. Lisa turned to see a room filled with old filing cabinets. Most of them were dented and rusted, but one drawer was slightly ajar, its contents spilling out onto the floor. Lisa's breath caught. Could this be what she was looking for? She knelt down and began sifting through the papers, her hands trembling. The documents were old, their edges yellowed and brittle. Most of them were medical records, filled with technical jargon that Lisa struggled to understand. But then she found a folder labeled Patient 12, Clara. Her heart pounded as she opened it. Inside were handwritten notes, photographs, and charts. One photo showed Clara sitting in a hospital bed, her face pale but smiling faintly. Another showed her standing next to a man in a white coat. Dr. Hayes, Lisa assumed. The notes mentioned genetic modification and unexpected results, but the details were vague. It was clear that whatever had been done to Clara wasn't entirely successful. "Mommy, is that her?" Maya asked, peering over Lisa's shoulder. Lisa nodded, her throat tight. I think so, sweetie. As she flipped through the pages, something caught her eye. It was a small handwritten note tucked at the back of the folder. The paper was worn and smudged, but the words were still legible. They're watching us. We can't trust anyone. Lisa's stomach turned. The note was unsigned, but the handwriting didn't match the doctor's notes. Who had written it? And what had they meant by they? Before Lisa could process the implications, a loud noise echoed through the hallway, a sharp metallic clang that made her jump. She quickly stuffed the folder into her bag and grabbed Mia's hand. "We need to go," she whispered, her voice trembling. They hurried back the way they had come, Lisa's heart racing with every step. The hallway felt longer now, the shadows darker. Just as they reached the entrance, a figure stepped into view, blocking their path. It was the elderly man from the bench. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and stern. Lisa froze, pulling Mia closer. "I'm just trying to find answers," she said, her voice shaky. "Please, I need to know the truth." The man sighed, his expression softening slightly. "The truth won't bring you peace," he said. "It'll only bring more questions, more danger." "What kind of danger?" Lisa asked, her voice rising. But before the man could answer, another sound interrupted them. A low, rumbling hum that seemed to come from deep within the building. Lisa's blood ran cold as she realized it was the same sound Mia had mentioned the day before. The man's face paled, and he took a step back. "You need to leave now," he said urgently. Lisa didn't need to be told twice. She scooped Mia up in her arms and bolted out of the building, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't stop until they were back at the car, the folder still clutched tightly in her hand. As they drove away from the hospital, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her eyes flicked to a rearview mirror constantly, scanning the empty road behind them. Mia sat quietly in the back seat, her usual chatter replaced by a thoughtful silence. When they reached the motel, Lisa locked the door and pulled the curtains tightly shut. She sat on the bed, the folder spread out before her. The documents confirmed what Eleanor had suspected. Clara had been subjected to genetic experiments as part of a larger secretive project. But what unsettled Lisa most was the mention of a control group, a group of individuals who had been monitored outside of the hospital setting. Could Mia be connected to this group? And if so, how? Lisa's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Her breath caught as she stood, her heart racing. She wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, she approached the door and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. "Mommy, who is it?" Mia asked softly. Lisa forced a smile, though her hands were trembling. "No one, sweetheart. It's probably just the wind." But deep down, Lisa knew better. Someone, or something, was trying to send her a message. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the picture they painted was darker and more terrifying than she could have imagined. And the closer Lisa got to the truth, the more she realized she might not be ready for what she was about to uncover.